to the session. I am Rachita Sachdevan. I'll be taking your chemistry session. So, guys, today is the beginning of your grade 9, that is Phoenix batch. So, I hope you all are set, you all are ready today to solve some chemical locha. So, we are starting with the very first chapter of your grade 9, and that is matter in our surroundings. And I can assure you guys, you were going to fall in love with this chapter. It's quite easy, and the best part about it is that you can relate this chapter with your day to day life and you will feel like, oh, this is happening around us. Yes, matter in our surroundings. So, everything you're surrounded with is a matter. Not only that, we as a human being is also considered to be as a matter. So, with as the chapter passes by, you will be surprised to know so many things which is going around you, and you might have not noticed those things in your day to day life. So, let's get ourselves started to solve some chemical locha. Kya would public chapter fateh? Yes. Chaliye. So, first chapter of your grade 9, that is matter in our surroundings, and starting with a one shot lecture. One shot lecture means I'll be teaching you this complete chapter in one go, and it's up to you, up to your learning ability. You can just fast forward this and watch it, or you can just watch slowly. So, this is a plus point when you are watching these videos. So, I hope you all are ready. So, these are the topics that we are targeting in this entire chapter, starting it with the physical nature of the matter. We will also be learning about what exactly is matter, what is the definition of matter. Though you guys have already learned this in your lower grades like 6 and 7, you know the definition basic one. Then we'll be learning about states of matter and its interconversion. Solid, liquid, gas, how they are interconvertible into each other. What are the conditions required to interconvert solid to liquid, liquid to gas, and vice versa. And lastly, you'll be learning one of my favorite topic, that is evaporation. To learn this topic, I will be giving you some trick, and which is one of the amazing trick I found. Chaliye. So, to give you more detailing about these topic, under states of matter, you guys have already learned about what is solid, what is liquid, what is gas. And by looking at a substance, you will be able to determine what is solid, what is liquid, and if it's oxygen, it's a gas, if it's carbon dioxide, it's a gas, if it's cold drink, it's a liquid, and so on. Now, talking about interconversion happens under certain conditions, maybe heat or maybe pressure. So, you will be learning more about boiling point, melting point, latent heat of vaporization, latent heat of fusion. These two might be new term to you guys, but I will make sure that I'll make it very, very easy for you to understand. And lastly, it's evaporation. Under this, you'll be learning about how rate of evaporation or the speed of evaporation is affected. Or you will also be learning about if acetone falls on your skin, why it feels cool, or why matka ka water feels cooler. Right? I hope you guys have used earthen pots. Earthen pots, water is cooler than the one which is kept outside in a bottle in hot sunny day. So why is that so? What is the chemical thing behind making that matka water or earthen pot water cooler? So all of those chemical things, chemistry and chemical locha, you'll be learning in this entire chapter. Please excuse my voice. It's not so good today, but I will try my best to make you understand each and everything, because somebody rightly said, show must go on. Chale guys. So starting out with matter, what is matter exactly? Now, this is a pen. Is this a matter? Yes. Anything which occupies space and have mass is called matter. So what are you surrounded with right now? Do let me know in the chat box. What are the matters you're surrounded with? Maybe pen, paper, pencil, bottle. I have a mouse. I have a laptop. I have keyboard in front of me. Some cells also, notebook also. My jacket also. Along with that, I also have a mug filled with water. So all of these are actually matter. Tell me something that you are surrounded with in the chat box. So as you can see this image, this man is surrounded with so many things. So these are the matters in our surrounding. Now thing is what these matters are made up of. This is where you will be learning more depth. So, on the basis of physical state, matter is classified as solid, liquid, gas. You have already heard these terms since your lower grades. Now, on the basis of chemical composition, matter is classified as pure substance and mixtures also. But the good part here is this part you will be learning in your chapter 2, that is matter around us is pure. In this chapter, number 1, we will be completely putting our focus in the first part. How classification of matter is done on the basis of physical state. So we'll be learning more about solid, liquids and gases. Rest of this chemical composition part, we will be learning in our second chapter, which is matter around us is pure. So stay tuned. Now, this is all about matter, pure substance, mixtures. This is this part is something that you will be learning in your chapter number 2, where you will be learning more about pure substance. What are pure substance? Are they divided into elements and compounds? What's the difference between elements and compound? Mixtures, how many types of mixtures are there? Homogeneous, heterogeneous, and so on. And n number of examples which will again be very relatable to your day-to-day life. So learning these chapters is quite easy because you don't have to ratify things. You can relate them and you can write them in your own language. That's the beauty of these chapters. So you just have to be focused and understand the basic concept, and rest you can kill it off very easily. So, starting up with the physical nature of matter, as I told you, we are all surrounded with matter, whether it's a watch, whether it's pen, whether it's pencil, or any other thing you're surrounded with is matter. But what are these matter made up of? What is this pen made up of? So, every matter are made up of tiny, tiny particles. All right, that's number one point. Particles are the part of a matter and they are very, very, very tiny. Moving on, particles of matter have space between them. That means whatever particles are present in this pen have little space in between them. Now, depending upon state of matter, the space can be varied. Thirdly, particles of matter are continuously moving maybe like this, or maybe like this. So, movement might vary from substance to substance, and this continuous movement is called as kinetic energy. I'll be giving you more detail about, on kinetic energy in this session later. Now, the particles of matter attract each other. Now, attraction could be too high, attraction could be less, or attraction could be least. Again, this attraction between particles will depend from substance to substance. I'll be explaining you these points more in the further session. So you have to remember these 4 physical points, 4 physical nature of matter, that matter are made up of tiny particles. Each particle has a space between them, no matter what kind of substance is that. It could be a less space, it could be more space, but there will definitely be space between particles. They are always in constant motion, as well as they will going to attract each other. These are the simple 4 points, and based on this, I'll be giving you example for each point that will help you understand everything quite simply. So I hope you all are ready. Let's start. Okay, starting up with the first physical nature of matter. Every particle is very tiny, which is present in matter, or in simple words, every matter are made up of tiny, tiny particles, isn't it? So how will we prove this? Okay, Let's take potassium permanganate. If you guys are aware about it, it's pink in color once you put it into water. Potassium permanganate formula is KMNO4. But don't worry guys, you don't have to write the formula, but at least you should know what example we are quoting here. So it is potassium permanganate. Once you add it into water, that turns pink. Now what we did, I'll explain you on a new slide. What we did, I took a beaker having approximately 1 liter of water, okay? And I put one big piece of potassium permanganate, KMNO4. I've added this piece into water in a beaker. Now, after some time, you would see that it turns pink in color. Now, what say public, if I take out little bit amount of water and put it into next beaker from the first one. So from first one, I poured some of the amount, let's say 20 ml, yeah, and again I added 20 ml. Again, in the third beaker, I took 20 ml. So what we did, we have transferred some of the water from this beaker to another beaker and I've diluted it. I've diluted it means I've added more water to it. Now I took some of the sample from the second beaker into third beaker and I've added more water to it. Now from the third beaker, I've shifted more water into the another beaker and then I've added new water, more water to it. Now what do we observe here? The observation is other beakers are still pink in color. They are not white, they are not colorless. They are still carrying that original color, but maybe in a lighter version. That means our particles are tiny and they are spreading. So everywhere you will find particles in a matter. So let's have a look here. Dissolve 2-3 crystals of potassium permanganate, which is KMNO4 in 100 ml of water in a beaker. Take 10 ml of solution and dissolve in 100 ml. So what we did, we took 10 ml from this beaker, we added it in the second beaker, and upar se, over that we have added more amount of water. So color becomes lighter and we have repeated this process further. So color of that particular solutions get lighter and lighter. So repeat this process 5-6 times and this shows that few crystals of potassium permanganate can color large volume of water. So in fact, chotu sa piece have the power to show that color in n number of beakers. That means that potassium permanganate is made up of tiny particles, large amount of particles were present in few crystals of potassium permanganate, which has the ability to give color to n number of the beakers. I hope you guys understood this part. So, potassium permanganate can color large volume of water because there are millions of tiny particles present in each crystal. So what do you think? How many particles this pen made up of? Millions and billions of particles are present in this one chotu sa pen. Isn't that amazing? That's the beauty of chemistry, guys. All right. Moving on, the second physical nature of matter, particles have space between them. How we can actually prove this, that particles have space between them? Okay, imagine you have taken one glass of water, okay, and we have added sugar to it. Let's make nimbu pani, let's make lemonade that we usually make at home. So we take one glass of water, we have added sugar into it, and we dissolve. Along with that, we have added lemon also. Now, what will happen? Will it all dissolve into each other, or you will get those pieces of sugar in your mouth? No, it will be completely dissolved into each other. How? How they will get dissolved into each other? Because every particle has spaces in between them. So, if I talk about water, water particles have little space between them. Now, as soon as you add sugar into it, okay, you have added sugar piece into it, that sugar piece will start breaking up and those particles of sugar will get into the spaces of liquid, that is water. So Water has allowed sugar particles to get into those spaces and dissolve into each other. So, this proves that particles have spaces in between them. Now, it could be very less space, more space, medium space. That depends from matter to matter, that depends from substance to substance. So, let's take a look on this. Take some water in a beaker, note its level. Dissolve some salt or sugar in it with the help of glass rod. Salt dissolves into water, but the level of water does not change. This also shows that each and every particle of salt or sugar get dissolved in water without changing the level of water. So please note this down. Even if you are adding something which is getting dissolved into water, will not going to make the level of water change. That will not going to increase or decrease the volume of water. Please note this down. By dissolving something into water, even if it's potassium permanganate you're dissolving, even it's sugar or salt you're dissolving, that will not going to increases or decreases the volume of water at normal temperature, at a room temperature. Like for example, if you're adding sugar cube into water, will it going to increase the level? No. Or it will going to decrease the level? No. Now imagine if this would be the case, if you're making tea, right? And your mom or your parents have asked you to make 2 cups of tea, and you made 1 cup, and you've asked your mom, Mama, just add some sugar into it, na, that will make it 2 cups. Does that ever happen? No. So even if you dissolve sugar or salt into water, that will not going to change the volume. Why? Because they are getting into the spaces of each other, so that will not going to vary the volume of the liquid. I hope that's clear, crystal clear, Samazla. Okay, on that positive note, let's move on to the next, nature of particle. Particles of matter are continuously moving. So I told you that particle could be like this motion. Particles can have little bit more continuous motion, or there could be more movement, and that movement is none other than kinetic energy. What does kinetic energy mean? You can write this in short form as KE. This is completely applicable in your exams as well. So you can use this short form very easily in your paper. Now what we did, let's say if we put some drop or even 1 drop of ink into water, slowly and gradually you would see that entire water will turn into that color. If you're putting blue coloring, slowly and gradually entire water would become blue in color. So how is this actually happening? Because particles are moving, guys. Because of the movement, they are able to change the color of water entirely. So if you see this kind of a thing in slow motion, you can see very clearly that how ink is spreading beautifully and slowly and evenly and making entire water into that color, which is constant color. It will not going to happen like top color is different, and the middle part is different and lower part is different. No, that complete water will going to be blue, which is of same color. But how did that happen? Just because of the movement of particles. Particles are continuously moving. It might be slow sometimes, it might be quick sometimes. Like for example, if we dissolve honey into water, that will take time because honey is more denser. Denser means thicker. If you're putting ink into water, that might dissolve faster as compared to honey. If you're adding lemon into water, that will dissolve quicker because of the density, because of the thickness. Now imagine if you're putting sugar cube into water. Definitely that will going to take some time to get dissolved. So kinetic energy can be more, kinetic energy can be medium, depending from substance to substance. Now one thing that you have to remember here is kinetic energy is directly proportional to temperature. This is quite important relation which is usually asked in your paper in section A, which is your MCQ questions. What does this mean? This means that kinetic energy, movement of particles, increases with the increase in temperature. What does directly proportional means? Directly proportional means if kinetic energy increases, temperature increases. If kinetic energy decreases, temperature decreases. Like for example, I have a beaker with sugar cube in it. है ना? This is sugar cube and this beaker is filled with water. Okay? This is at room temperature. I'm talking about room temperature dissolution. Now I take one more beaker with same amount of water. Okay? I've added same amount of water in another beaker and same sugar cube, same size of sugar cube is also added. But at this point of time, we are heating this. Which will dissolve quicker? You tell me in the chat box. Beaker 1, this is your beaker 1, this is your beaker 2. Beaker 1 has sugar cube in water, but we are trying to dissolve it at room temperature. In beaker 2, we did the same thing, but the only difference here is that we are heating this beaker. So which will dissolve quicker? Beaker 2? Yes, sugar in beaker 2 will dissolve faster as compared to beaker 1. Why? What is the chemical locha behind it? So let me tell you, that depends upon kinetic energy. So as temperature increases, particles will going to move, right? As particles are moving, okay, and they were going to try to break from each other. That force of attraction will become weaker. They go far from each other and get into the spaces of liquid. So as temperature increases, that sugar cube particles will start dancing, and they will dance so fast, and kinetic energy, because it increases, that force of attraction will going to break eventually. They will be set free and get into these spaces of water and dissolve. This is how dissolution becomes faster with increase in temperature. So temperature increases, bond becomes weaker, particles will get into space of water, particles of solid actually, which get into these spaces of water and dissolve quicker. So we have increased this dissolution by increasing the temperature. So remember, kinetic energy is directly proportional to temperature. So take some water in a beaker, put few drops of blue or red ink slowly along from the sides of the beaker, leave it undisturbed, and after few hours you will see that ink will be spread evenly throughout the water. How does that happen? Due to the movement. Movement means kinetic energy, movement of particles of water and ink. Now this intermixing of two or more different substance of matter is called as diffusion. This is very, very important definition for your exam point of view. What is diffusion? Diffusion bole to intermixing of particles. Like for example, I'll give you one beautiful example you can relate with is Maggie. Okay. So if Maggie is cooking in the kitchen right now and your mother or your father is giving you surprise, will you be able to smell that Maggie is cooking in the kitchen? Absolutely yes. But if Maggie is kept into the packet in a cabinet, will you able to smell it? No. So guys, this proves that if temperature is less, kinetic energy is less, if movement is less, you will not be able to smell it. Particles are not be able to come through to your nose. But if temperature increases, Maggie is cooking Yeah, so that means temperature is higher. If temperature is higher, those Maggie K particles will get diffused, intermix into the particles of air which travel to your nose, and you were going to smell that. Yeah, Maggie is cooking, isn't it? Or you're passing by Pizza Hut, or you're passing by some dhaba, some restaurant, and you can smell that food. How you're able to smell it to a certain distance? That's because of diffusion and kinetic energy. So please make a note: as temperature increases, kinetic energy increases, diffusion diffusion increases means intermixing of particles increases. Let's say, I'll give you one more example: agarbatti, that is incense stick. So if anybody is burning incense stick, you can smell it to a certain distance, or to a other room also you can smell it. How? Because incense stick has been heated, particles of incense sticks, as temperature increases, kinetic energy increases, and those particles move into air, get diffused. Diffuse means intermix with the air particles, travel to your nose, and this is how you can smell that beautiful fragrance of incense stick. Clear, boss? Give me a thumbs up in chat box. So these are some good examples you can even quote in your exams as well. All right, guys. Now it's time for us to move on to our next physical nature. Every particle of matter attract each other. See, again, attraction can be a solid force of attraction. Attraction can be medium and attraction can be weaker, depending from substance to substance, from matter to matter. But there definitely be attraction between particles. Like if I give you an example of solid always have a high force of attraction, and that's why they are rigid. We cannot change their shape. Whereas in liquid particles have little bit space between each other, or you can say that attraction between liquids is little bit lesser as compared to that of solids. And whereas in gases, they have more space between particles, means the attraction is least in case of gases. How we can prove this? Let's take a look. So we have taken an iron nail, a piece of a chalk, and a rubber band. Now, what do you think? Which can be broken very easily? Chalk? Now, I'll make you recall those chaotic things that you did in your school. You might did in your school. Have you ever played Chepa Chepi? I did. I hope you guys have played it. What is Chepa Chepi? Let me tell you. Using chalk, we just break those chalks and we try to hit each other using those chalks. That game was called as Chepa Chepi. So chalk is so easier to break. Even chota bacha can break chalk, guys, right? So if we talk about iron nail, even hammer cannot break iron nails that easily. Do you agree with that, right? And what about rubber band? Rubber band is something we can stretch, but if you stretch too hard, it will going to break. So what is the difference between these three examples? In iron nail, as we talk about, iron is so solid. Why it is solid? Because particles of solid of iron nail, if I talk specifically, are very close to each other. So attraction between particles of solid iron nail is quite strong. So it's hard to break because they are quite close to each other. Whereas if I talk about chalk particles are little less bounded to each other. The force of attraction is quite weaker. They are not too much attracted to each other, so it can be broken. See, relation can be broken easily if they are not attracted to each other. Do you agree with me? Yeah. So it's same in chalk. Chalk can be broken easily just because particles of chalk are not too attracted to each other. In case of rubber band, it's a solid. Still, it can be stretched. It's one of the exceptional example. But if you stretch it too hard, it will break. But if you stretch a rubber band and you leave it, right? If you release that pressure, that will going to regain its original shape, and hence we can say that it's a solid. So we can say here, take an iron nail, piece of chalk, rubber band. Try breaking using hammer, cutting or stretching. It's easier to break chalk. It's less easy to break rubber band, but it's difficult to break iron nail. So this is because particles in iron nail are held together with a greater force of attraction. Their attraction is quite strong and it's too hard to break. Whereas in chalk, it can be easily broken. Clear, boys? I hope that's clear. Chagde fatte. Alright, guys, so as we are done with physical nature of matter, it's time for us to move on those three states of matter, those three magical words: solid, liquid, and gas. Yes. So these are three states of matter we'll be learning today, about their chemistry, about their properties, and many more examples. So let's get ourselves started. Solid can be represented by S. Liquid will be represented by small l, and gas will be represented by G. These are the shorter terms that you will be using more frequently in your grade 10 rather than in your grade 9. But I would going to tell you to learn these and remember these shorter forms. It's not too hard. It's very simple. All right, guys. So, as we are talking about properties of solids, liquids, and gases, they are very different from each other. Let's take an example and understand. So, as we're talking about solids, they have a definite shape and fixed volume. What does that mean? That means this is a pen which is a solid, isn't it? So, can I change the shape like that? No. Even if I keep it on my hand, the shape will be fixed. If I keep it on a floor, that shape will be fixed. So it will not going to change the shape. Solids have fixed shape and fixed volume as well. Whereas space between particles, as we are talking about solids are quite rigid. They are rigid. What does rigid means? Rigid means which do not tend to change their shape even after applying external force. So as I am applying external force, I cannot change the shape. I will going to break it. I can't do that. Okay, so even if I take remote, I cannot change the shape because particles are too tightly packed. They have a very, very strong force of attraction. So it's very hard to change their shape even if we apply external force. That's when we call them as rigid. In Hindi, we call them as akadu. Rigid means akadu. The solids are kind of akadu. Space between particles is minimum, and therefore force of attraction between particles is maximum. I'll give you one simple example. Okay? Somebody, like it's just an example. Somebody is living in your neighborhood, okay? And there is a friend living in your next street. And there is third situation where two people are living in different cities altogether. Okay, different cities altogether. This is next lane, a different lane, and these are neighbors. Who will have more force of attraction? Obviously neighbors, because they are talking frequently, they are in touch, they are going out having fun. So these two have minimum space between them, and that's why their force of attraction is the strongest as compared to those two who are staying in different lanes. So they have more distance. More distance means less force of attraction. They will not going to be talking much or going out much. Whereas long distance relationship, when two people are living in different cities altogether, different states, different countries, that means they have a huge distance between them. That means their force of attraction will be least. I hope you understood this concept. So in case of solid, particles are neighbors. I relate this as solid, I relate this situation as liquid, and I relate third situation as gas. Slowly and gradually, I'll explain you. So here they are too close to each other. Particle space is quite less, and that's the reason they are in more attraction. So force of attraction is stronger, and that's why they are quite rigid. Movement of particle is minimum because they're standing too close to each other, so they can just vibrate to and fro. So this is the movement in solid. Guys, movement, continuous movement will always be there in particles. It cannot be a zero kind of a situation. That is absolutely incorrect if you're writing in your paper. No movement, zero movement is not a thing here. Particles will be continuously moving, no matter how less or how more, but they will be moving. So in case of solids, because they are quite close to each other, minimum space, and that's why they'll be doing this to and fro motion. They are least compressible. Obviously, I cannot compress this. I cannot compress remote or very rigid solid. But there is one exception here, and we call it as sponge. So those who are thinking, ma'am, sponge is also solid now, then how we can compress it? So there is a chemistry behind it, which I'll be explaining you soon. Lastly, the rate of diffusion is least. Rate of diffusion means what? Diffusion means intermixing. If you are putting pen into water, will it dissolve? No. If you are putting sugar cube, which is a solid, into water, it will dissolve, but that rate means speed. Please write it down. I'll be using this term frequently. Rate means speed. All right. So the speed of diffusion or intermixing will be least in case of solids. Now, these are some examples of solid. This is one of the cute skeleton I saw. Rock, iron nail, iron rod, all of these things are solid, quite rigid, cannot be compressed easily. Shape is fixed, volume is fixed, and so on. Now, moving on to liquids. In liquids, particles are little far as compared to solid. So solid ka case was particles are quite close to each other. In case of liquids, particles have certain space between them. So we can say that liquids have no definite shape but has fixed volume. What does that mean? So if I put liquid in different shapes of containers, so they will going to occupy that shape. For example, you can see here, I've placed this liquid in 3 different forms, and liquid has taken the shape of those containers. Now, let's say I've taken 2 liter of water, okay, and I've placed this, shifted this 2 liter of water into a bowl. So it will take the shape of the bowl. Now I have another, let's say a flask. Okay, another container which has a shape like conical flask. So 2 liter of water was shifted to this one. Now again I'll shift this into another container. So 2 liter will be 2 liter only, guys. That volume will remain fixed, but shape can be changed according to the shape of the container. I hope that samajla. Clear, boss? Crystal clear? Alright. So liquids have no fixed shape. That can be changed, but volume will always be fixed. Now, liquids take the shape of the container, which we have already seen. Space between particles is intermediate, means so-so. Moderate space between particles. Now, because of that, force of attraction is also intermediate. Particles are this far, so force of attraction will be there, but not as much as compared to solids. Movement of particles is intermediate. So now they have more space. They can move around. Not as solids where they don't have actually space and they're just moving to and fro. But in case of liquid, they can actually have little movement from here and there. There are more compression possible as compared to solid. I'll give you one good example here. How many of you like to play Holi? Let me know in the chat box. So in Holi, what we used to do, we make those balloons which are filled with water and color, right? And we just throw on people who go from our place and all that stuff. So that water balloon can be squeezed, right? That can be compressed. So we can say this, they are more compressible as compared to solids. So yes, we can compress liquids as compared to solid because of the spaces between them. So these spaces can be reduced by compressing, by applying more pressure. So pressure increases, compressibility increases, particles become closer to each other. Now, lastly, the rate of diffusion is more as compared to solids. Obviously, if we are putting ink into water and if we are putting sugar into water, which will dissolve faster? Obviously, ink being liquid has more space between them. Water as a liquid have more space between them, so they can easily get into each other's spaces and dissolve beautifully as compared to any other solid. Solid, clear है बस एकदम मस्त. Do let me know in the chat box if you still have any doubts or more new examples. You can do quote it in the chat box. I would love to see them, and I would love to clarify your doubts as well. Okay, moving on to gases. So gases is kind of a long distance relationship when particles are very far from each other. So that means their force of attraction is least. So gases have no fixed shape or fixed volume. No offense, but I always have that kind of a thought that gases are like poofajis in the house. Whatever space you will provide them, they will fellow. They will take the entire space. So they have no fixed shape, no fixed volume, and that are gases. They occupy the whole space of the container. Whatever you provide them, they'll take that space. Space between particles is maximum. Okay, as you can see the comparative diagram between solid, liquids and gases, gaseous particles have large space, and because of that large space they can show more movement. Kinetic energy would be highest in case of gases. So I can say kinetic energy in gases will be more as compared to liquids and solids. Okay, gases have more kinetic energy. Why? Because they have more space between them. And liquids have moderate space, so they will have less kinetic energy, whereas in case of solids, particle space is least, so movement will be least, kinetic energy will be least in case of solids. Force of attraction between particles is minimum. Obviously, long distance relationship. Movement, kinetic energy would be maximum in case of gases. They are most compressible. I'll give you one nice example for this. You might have seen nowadays in birthday parties, people are used to do those birthday decorations in a very unique way. They make different shapes and sculptures out of balloon. Have you noticed this? I hope you guys have noticed this. How is it possible? Because gases can be compressed to a larger extent, and that's the reason they can be molded into different shapes and sculptures. So, that is the reason we are able to do good, unique decorations nowadays because of gaseous balloons. So, they are most compressible and their rate of diffusion is highest. How come rate of diffusion is highest? अगरबत्ती, इंसेंस स्टिक एग्जाम्पल ले लो, मैगी एग्जाम्पल ले लो, और बटर चिकन और मे बी बटर पनीर. You can take those examples. When they are cooking, you can smell it to a longer distance. Why? Because particles of that food will get diffused into particle of air, will travel towards you, and yummy, yummy, right? So you can smell those foods from a long distance. And disclaimer, I have no intent to make your mouth water, but yeah, these are some examples you can quote in your paper. Alright guys, so this is a comparative diagrams that you can look here. This is solid where particles are quite closer, liquid have particles little far, and in gases they are quite far from each other. Alright guys, so as you've learned solid, liquids and gases, are there more states of matter which is left? Yes, absolutely. You will be learning today about fourth and fifth state of matter, and they are quite interesting. You might think, ma'am, it was all around us, but still we were not able to recognize that, and especially that would be for plasma. So let's take a look on our fourth state of matter, which is BEC, named as Bose-Einstein condensate. What does that mean and how does that work? So Bose-Einstein condensate was made by cooling these samples of rubidium at a very low temperature. Obviously you guys are not aware about this element, so that is not a problem, guys. I'm just explaining you more than it's given in your NCERT, so just sit tight and listen. So what happened with BEC, it works at a very low temperature, which is near to absolute zero. It's quite low temperature. Now, where will you see this? You will going to find this in liquid helium, which is again quite unstable. Superconducting materials also you will be finding BEC. Now, mainly scientists work with BEC because that is really helpful for them to study about light. As we all know that speed of light is too high. You might have learned this in physics also. Because light ka speed is so high, it's hard to study more about light or nature of light. So what scientists did was, if you pass light through Bose-Einstein condensate, that reduces the speed of light, which help them to learn more about light, their dual behavior, their wave nature, and so on. So you were going to learn these things once you go in your higher grades, and if you opt science, you were going to learn about these lights also, their nature also, their dual behavior. What all terms I'm saying right now, you will be learning about them more. Okay, moving on to your fifth state of matter, which is plasma. Plasma is present in stars, it's present in sun. Not only that, you might have seen those neon lights in front of restaurants, maybe, where it says good food, good mood. Yeah, have you saw those neon lights in movies also? They put it outside bars and all. You might have observed that. So those neon lights also have plasma in it. So lightning, aurora, you might have heard in Finland or northern sides. So aurora, neon signs, fluorescent lights all have plasma in it. Now plasma and BEC works completely opposite to each other. So as you've seen, BEC works at a very low temperature, a cold environment, whereas on the other hand, plasma works at a very high temperature. So plasma is not generally seen as a form of matter, but it's made up of particles which has extremely high kinetic energy. High temperature means high kinetic energy. Very high temperature means very high kinetic energy. So we can see that lightning, aurora, neon signs, fluorescent, in fact stars and sun also consist of plasma gases. So it works at a very high temperature. Fourth and fifth state works very opposite to each other. So what you should know about these fourth and fifth state of matter: firstly, name. What is fourth state? What is fifth state? Name. Secondly, you should know at what temperature they work, high temperature or low temperature. Thirdly, one or two examples would be fine. So that much idea you should have for fourth and fifth state of matter. Alright guys, now how do you convert solid to liquid, liquid to gas, or vice versa? If I want to convert again gas to liquid, then liquid to solid, or maybe I would like to convert solid directly to gas without turning into liquid state. How we can do that? So we can do that by interconversion, and interconversion of state of matter happens under certain conditions. That is what we will be learning now. So interconversion of state of matter can be done by either change in temperature. You can heat something and convert it into other state, or maybe cool down. So by the change in temperature, we can convert from one state into another. And secondly, we can interchange by change in pressure. How? Let's have a look. One thing that you need to keep in mind, please write it in your notebook, that temperature works independently. That means by just heating and by just cooling, we can convert one state into another. For example, ice. If you heat ice, or even if you keep ice outside the freezer by high temperature, it would going to convert from solid to liquid state. Now water, if you boil it, it will going to turn into gaseous state. So with a change in just temperature, by heating it only, you're able to convert the state. Now, if I start cooling it down, liquid has been cooled down, it turns into solid. Water, if it's cooled down, it turns into ice. So by just change in temperature, by lowering down temperature, I'm able to interchange the state of matter. That means temperature works independently to convert one state into another. But as we come to pressure, pressure is dependent upon temperature. Pressure cannot work independently. Pressure cannot take that much pressure to convert independently one state into another. So it requires the help of temperature to convert one state into another. And I'll explain you this by an example. Let's start by changing temperature. From this diagram, you get a good idea here. So when solids are heated, they are converted into liquid state. So temperature has been increased, just temperature. Liquid can once again be heated, they will turn into gaseous state. Now as we're going ulta, opposite, if gases are cooled down, they will be turning into liquid state. If liquids are cooled down, they will be converted into solid state. These conversions have their specific name. Like for example, ice melts, right? So solid to liquid state is melting. Similarly, liquid to gaseous, it's boiling. Liquid boils into gas. So this is called as boiling, or it's also named as vaporization. Melting is also termed as fusion. Now, ulta also has those terms. Like gas converting into liquid state, it's called liquefaction, right? Or liquid turning into solid is called freezing or solidification. In fact, gas to liquid is also called as condensation. So there are various terms, specific terms given to those conversions as well, which you need to remember, because questions are asked from this part in your section A, which is 1 mark questions. Alright guys, moving one by one, first starts with melting. Melting has an alternative term called fusion, and mostly children forget this term in paper. And let me tell you honestly, in your question paper, they use fusion term over melting or melt. And this is where most of the children get confused and they think like, oh, we didn't read about it. What is fusion? No, guys, melting is fusion, fusion is melting. That's an alternative term. So please remember this. Okay, so what is melting? Simply when solid melts into liquid, when solid melts and changes into liquid, we call it as melting. But at what temperature does it actually happen? So the process of melting is called as fusion. When solid is heated, obviously temperature is increased. Once temperature increases, kinetic energy increases, vibration between particles increases. They break that force of attraction and turns into different state of matter, which is liquid state. So solid has particles quite close to each other. As temperature increases, they start dancing. That vibration increases. That force of attraction becomes weaker. Particles go far from each other and turns into liquid state. And in between, we call it as melting. Conversion of solid to liquid state. It melts. So the temperature at which solid melts is called as its melting point, and melting point of ice is 0 degree Celsius. Now one more unit you can see here is K, and what is this K? This is called as Kelvin. It's degree Celsius and this is Kelvin. Kelvin is a standard international unit of temperature. Let me write this down for you guys. Kelvin is SI unit. What does SI unit means? SI means Standard International Unit. So this is a unit which is used generally while solving questions also. Once you go in higher grades like 11th and 12th and you will be solving some numericals, you will always have to use temperature in Kelvin. Right? So this is the unit of temperature, just like Celsius, Fahrenheit. Kelvin is also one of the unit of temperature. All right. Now this is where questions comes in your paper. Convert Kelvin into degree Celsius or vice versa. Convert degree Celsius into Kelvin. How will you do that? Let me tell you. So melting point of ice is 0 degrees Celsius and I want to convert this into Kelvin unit. So there is a formula which I've written for you guys. Kelvin is equals to 0 degrees Celsius plus 273. Or Kelvin is equals to degree Celsius plus 273. This is the formula. This is the formula. So here, what is the temperature in degrees Celsius? 0. That's the melting point of ice. At 0 degrees Celsius, ice starts melting. Please listen to what I'm saying. Starts melting. Continuous tense. Starts melting. So that's a temperature at which ice starts melting is called as its melting point, which is 0 degrees Celsius. So if I place this 0 degrees Celsius here and add 273 to it, so what would be the Kelvin thing? That is 273 Kelvin. So melting point of ice in Kelvin will be 273. So either you write 0 degrees Celsius or 273 Kelvins, it's one of the same thing. Both of them are melting points of the ice. Clear? Super duper clear? Give me a thumbs up in chat box. Alright guys, now moving on to boiling. As you all already know, liquid starts changing into gaseous state, vapor state. We call that as boiling. So obviously for that we have to heat a liquid. That means temperature needs to be increased. Temperature increases, kinetic energy increases, right? So when liquid is heated, particles begin to move. So in liquid state, particles are little far from each other. As temperature increases, means we are heating it. We have started boiling it. Now these particles have started dancing. And while they are dancing and moving, they will going to break that force of attraction and they will move far from each other and turn into gaseous state. That's how boiling works. For boiling of water, we require a particular temperature. That's boiling point. Temperature at which liquid starts boiling. Continuous tense. Starts boiling. So, the boiling point of water is 100 degrees Celsius. At 100 degrees Celsius, water starts converting into a vapor state, gaseous state. So, that's 100 degree Celsius. Now, it's degrees Celsius. That is just the formula. Kelvin is equal to degree Celsius plus 273. Now we want to convert this into Kelvin. How we'll do that? Kelvin is equals to degree Celsius plus 273, right? What is Celsius temperature? 100 plus 273, and that gives us what? That gives us what? 373, simple maths, 373 Kelvin. You have to put a unit here, otherwise you lose marks. Such numericals are a part of your papers also. So be prepared whether they are asking you to convert degree Celsius to Kelvin or Kelvin to degree Celsius. You just have to apply this formula. Kelvin is equals to degree Celsius plus 273 and you will be done and dusted. Super clear, boss? Shagde Fateh. All right. Now moving on to the third one, which is sublimation. We have converted solid to liquid, liquid to gas. Now, I want to convert solid directly into gas without changing into liquid state. Yeah, I want to do that. But can I do that in anything? Can I convert any solid into gaseous state without turning into liquid state? No. There are certain examples of sublimable solids which has the power or the ability to convert solid into gaseous state directly straight away without turning into liquid state. For example, camphor, naphthalene balls, dry ice. Let me tell you, if we are putting winter clothes, you might have seen our parents are putting some naphthalene balls in it. With winter clothes, for that entire summer season, when winter clothes are stored somewhere, we always throw some naphthalene balls. But have you ever seen those naphthalene balls are making your clothes wet? No, because they do not convert into liquid state, guys. Naphthalene balls from solid state directly converts into gaseous state. They vaporize. They just do their job by killing the bacteria without turning into liquid state. Such solids are called as sublimable solid, and that conversion is called as sublimation. Here, boss, yeah. So when solids to gases, from gases to solid, directly without changing into liquid state, it's called sublimation. But let me make this clear. Let me clarify this thing. Once solid change into gaseous state without turning into liquid state, this is called as sublimation. But if we are talking opposite, gas to solid without turning into liquid state, we call it as deposition. It has a different name. Or in some of the books, it is also written as desublimation. But to you children, I would advise to use term deposition over desublimation. This is more technical and a correct term over this. So please write ulta. Gas converts into solid without turning into liquid state. This particular process is called as deposition, whereas solid converting into gaseous state without converting into liquid state is called as sublimation. Super clear? Okay. Samajla, right? So as I was talking about certain examples here, it includes ammonium chloride. It's white color salt, NH4Cl, camphor, we all know. We use in puja also, kapoor, right? That's camphor. Dry ice. Nowadays, ice cream parlors are also giving dry ice. Naphthalene balls, iodine. Iodine is purple color crystals, very beautiful and shiny. Purple color crystals is iodine. So these are certain common examples of sublimation. Now I'll explain you this with a very basic example, and I'll try to make you imagine how this is actually happening. Now once you go to higher grades, you will definitely get a chance to perform this experiment, and it's really beautiful and magical. Though it takes 1 to 2 hours to perform, but results are really worth the wait. So let me explain you this. We are doing a sublimation process with an example of ammonium chloride. Cool? So ammonium chloride, NH4Cl, it's a white color solid. We have taken this in a china dish. Fine. And we have covered it with the inverted funnel. So as we have covered this with an inverted funnel, we have blocked this opening by using a cotton bud. So we have covered this with cotton bud as well. Now we start heating this china dish which consists of ammonium chloride. As we start heating this, obviously ammonium chloride being a sublimable solid will directly convert without turning into liquid state. It directly convert into gaseous state and start going up. Now, as gases are trying to move out, but we have covered this from a cotton, so they will start turning back again into solid state. So they will cool down because they're not getting space to go out. They will start cooling down, and that will going to reverse the process, and we call this as deposition. Sublimation is done, guys. Gases are not able to move out because of cotton here. We have blocked this place with cotton. So they will start depositing onto the surface of this inverted funnel. and they will make little needles, thin needles, beautiful needles. You will feel like a cloud of needles will be collected at this edges of inverted funnel. It's so mesmerizing and a beautiful experiment. Even you go on YouTube and check this out, it's so good. But if you perform it live, you feel so nice. So yeah, this is one of the example and one of the experiment which shows sublimation very clearly. Alright guys, so overall you all have learned about interconversion of state from solid to liquid to gases, back again after cooling, from liquid to again solid, and from gases to again liquid. In fact, you have also learned how to directly convert from solid to gases and gases to solid without converting them into liquid state along with those examples. So sublimation ka examples are very important for your exam point of view. Alright guys, now it's time for you to learn something which is hidden. Yes, hidden heat. Hidden heat is also called as latent heat. Does that sound exciting? Yes, to me it is. Now what is hidden heat means here? Let me explain this to you. See, we have learned solid converts into liquid state. Liquid converts into gaseous state. Ice starts melting. Ice starts melting into water, which is liquid, right? At 0 degrees Celsius. Liquid starts boiling. Okay? At 100 degrees Celsius, it starts boiling and convert into gaseous state, which is vapors, water vapors. Correct? Till here we have learned. Now to explain this conversion only, how this conversion is happening. You have just told me, ma'am, solid converts into liquid, liquid converts into gas, we are just heating it. Ice starts melting into liquid, liquid after you boil it, it turns into water vapors. You're telling me all this. I know this already, but how exactly this is happening? Please help me. So how exactly this is happening, that is something which will be explained under a topic called latent heat. This is very basic. Even chotu bachcha can tell this ki okay, if you boil water, it will turn into vapors. If you are melting ice, ice will turn into water. Chota bachcha can also say that. But what chemistry is going behind that? How exactly they are converting from one to another? At what temperature exactly they are converting to one another? That is when you will be learning about latent heat. This is where this latent heat comes into picture. Clear? Chaliye. Now, what does latent heat means? First, understand that latent heat itself as a term means hidden. Hidden heat. Where it's hidden, what it's doing hiding, let's learn. So, latent heat is the energy required to change one state into another. To convert solid to liquid state, there is a hidden heat in the system which helps to convert solids to liquid. Or there is a hidden heat in the system which helps to convert liquid into vapor state, and that you cannot judge on the thermometer. So that is called as latent heat. Latent heat is the energy required to change the state of a substance without changing the temperature. That's the important line. As that heat is being consumed, that hidden heat is being consumed in overcoming the force of attraction between particles. This is the graph, but I will be talking and explaining you graph later. Before that, let me explain you in a simpler way. I'll come to this graph later, guys. This graph comes to your paper for 4 to 5 marks. So before that, I'll explain you some basic concept. All right. Imagine we have taken a beaker. This beaker is filled with ice cubes. Just stay with me and focus. I've taken a beaker. Beaker is filled with ice cubes. And temperature of ice cubes is, let's say, minus 5 degrees Celsius. How will I know that? Because I've placed a thermometer in it. So a thermometer is being placed in it. So it shows me -5 degrees Celsius. Okay? So this thermometer shows me that ice ka current temperature is -5 degrees Celsius. Now, I'm heating the system at the same time. I've started heating this beaker which contain ice. Ice ka temperature is -5 degrees Celsius. Cool? Cool, cool, cool. So as we are heating this, obviously temperature will rise. Obviously, na? That's how things work. So as I'm heating this beaker, temperature will rise and move to 0 degrees Celsius. It comes to 0 degrees Celsius. As you're heating it continuously, still we are heating it. But strangely, temperature got constant. Temperature on thermometer is not increasing. That's strange, right? We are heating the system, still temperature is constant. Thermometer is good, thermometer is okay, checked. Then why temperature is not increasing? Where is the heat going which we are providing? That is hidden heat. So as we are continuously heating this system and temperature got stuck and constant at 0 degrees Celsius, so whatever heat you are given is hidden in the system. Hidden means latent heat. Now what is this latent heat doing? This heat is used in converting ice which is solid into water which is liquid. So the extra amount of heat which is not shown up on this thermometer is hidden into the system, which helps to convert ice which is consumed in converting ice into liquid. That means it is consumed in overcoming these force of attraction of solid and converting into liquid state. So this hidden heat is consumed in overcoming these force of attraction and converted into a liquid state. Temperature increases, kinetic energy among these particles increases, they break their force of attraction and turns into liquid state. So where this is exactly happening? This is happening at 0 degrees Celsius. So at 0 degrees Celsius, solid is converting into liquid state. That means ice here is converting into water state, liquid state of water, and we call it as melting, and that's why we are saying is melting of ice is 0 degree Celsius. I hope you understand this point. Yeah, crystal clear, ice clear. Okay, I will repeat this one more time. We have taken ice in a container, we put a thermometer in it. Initial temperature was -5 degrees Celsius, let's say, and we've heated the system. As we've started heating it, obviously temperature on thermometer will increase, but it's still solid. Now at 0 degrees Celsius, temperature got stuck even if we are heating it continuously. So the extra amount of heat is a latent heat which is consumed in converting from ice to water. So this latent heat which helps in melting, is called as latent heat of fusion. What it is called? It is called as latent heat of fusion. Why fusion? Because it's melting. Ice to water, solid to liquid. So this hidden heat in the system which helps to convert solid to liquid, ice into water, is called as latent heat of fusion. Fine. So what is the definition here? Latent heat of fusion means heat energy required to change 1 kg of solid into liquid at atmospheric pressure. Atmospheric pressure means pressure applied by atmosphere on the surface of water is the atmospheric pressure. In short, we write this as ATM. What is it? It's not that ATM. Not that one. ATM here means atmospheric pressure. It's a short form by which you can write it. At its melting point, which is 0 degrees Celsius, it's called as latent heat of fusion. Now, one more thing. I will make one more diagram here. Now situation is different. How situation is different? I've taken the same beaker where ice is already converted into liquid state, where ice is converted into water now, and temperature on the thermometer is 0 degrees Celsius. Cool? Temperature thermometer is there. I'm just continuously heating the system, guys. It's the same system I'm drawing. It's the same system what I've drawn there. Now ice is converted into liquid state. So I'm taking a second case. Second case, same beaker. Same beaker. What we did, now ice is converted into water state. Same thermometer is there. We are still heating the system. But as we are heating the system, temperature will start rising again. Temperature will start rising and reaches to 100 degrees Celsius. Obviously, we are heating it. Temperature will rise. So now after melting is completed, ice turns into water, liquid state. Temperature will again starts rising and reaches to 100 degrees Celsius. But, a weird thing happened again. 100 degrees Celsius, it got stuck. Just like 0 degrees Celsius, it again got stuck on 100 degrees Celsius. Even we are heating the system, it got stuck. It's not increasing. Why? So what is happening here? Again, hidden heat. So the heat which is going in the system, which is not increasing the temperature on thermometer, is used up, is consumed in converting liquid water to gaseous water. So now this liquid will be converted into gaseous form at 100 degrees Celsius by the use of that extra amount of heat, which is latent heat. Latent heat. Now what is latent heat of? Vaporization, because it's turning a liquid into vapor state or a gaseous state. Vaporization. So this is latent heat of vaporization. Latent heat of fusion kya tha? What was latent heat of fusion? It was converting solid to liquid state at its melting point. Now at boiling point, this is boiling point now. At its boiling point, latent heat or the hidden heat in a system will be consumed in converting liquid to vapor state. Means liquid ka particles was little far apart. Now the heat present in the system, the extra heat present in the system will going to break these force of attraction, that will going to consumed in breaking these force of attraction and convert it into gaseous state or a vapor state. समझला? Clear है boss? Yeah? Shagde fatte. So let's see the definition of latent heat of vaporization. Latent heat of vaporization is the heat required to change 1 kg of liquid into gas at atmospheric pressure at its boiling point, which is 100 degrees Celsius here, is called latent heat of vaporization. Now I hope you understand how this 0 degrees Celsius came, how this 100 degrees Celsius came as a specific temperature. So universally we see that, okay, at a normal level, what is the melting point of ice? 0 degree. What is the boiling point of water? 100 degrees Celsius, right? So this is how we got these temperature by these experiments. Now I'm taking you back to the graph, guys. I told you this graph is quite important for your exam point of view. It do give you questions for 4 to 5 marks. They sometimes give you graph and they ask questions from that, or they will ask you to even draw the graph and answer questions accordingly. Okay? So let me explain you. Usually it's the first scenario. They give you graph and they'll ask you questions accordingly. So this graph is between temperature and heat supplied. Okay? So as heat is supplied from, let's say, -5 degrees Celsius, I'll take one more. So it's temperature and heat supplied. I'll just go very slowly here. Please focus and understand this graph. So what happened? I'm just explaining complete latent heat ka topic in this graph. How this graphical representation done? It's between temperature and heat supplied. So let's say we have started it at -5 degrees Celsius, which was our ice. Okay. As heat has been supplied, temperature increases, reaches to 0 degrees Celsius. At 0 degrees Celsius, temperature became constant, right? Even if we are applying heat or supplying heat, that temperature become constant. At this point, solid is converting into liquid state. This is a point when I call it as latent heat of fusion, right? So 0 degree will be considered as a melting point of ice, where ice is converting into liquid state. Now, once it's completely converted into liquid state, it will again shoot up the temperature. Heat has been supplied, guys, continuously. We have not stopped heat. As heat has been supplied, temperature will again start shooting and become constant. Now, this temperature is seen to be 100 degrees Celsius. So, at 100 degrees Celsius, this liquid will start turning into vapor state. And at this point, I will call it as latent heat of what? Come on, write it down in the chat box. It is called as latent heat of vaporization. Now again, it will going to start increase in temperature and turns into steam. Is that cool? Cool. So I'll take you back again to that graph. We have started from ice, solid state. It turns to liquid state by consuming the hidden heat in the system. Fusion means melting. Now, once it is melted, the temperature again starts increasing. This liquid will be converting into vapors by using this hidden heat called as latent heat of vaporization and turns into gaseous state. So, solid clear hoga bhai aur behno. This is where you can gain 4 to 5 marks directly. Do not take this graph lightly. It's super duper important. In fact, questions related to this is given in the back exercise of your NCRT as well. Okay. Kya bolti public? How's everything going? Super good? Yeah? Okay. Now there is a second case coming up by the change in pressure. So as I recall you, I give you one recollection. Okay, so let's recall one thing here. I told you interconversion of state of matter can happen by either change in temperature or by change in pressure. Change in temperature can happen directly, independently. But pressure cannot take that much pressure and requires some dependency on temperature. So pressure cannot work alone to convert solid to liquid. If you're thinking that solid can be converted into liquid by just applying pressure, no. Or liquid can be turned into gases by increase or decrease in pressure, no. That cannot happen. You have to maintain the temperature along with the pressure. You have to work with temperature also if you are working with pressure. So, by the change in pressure, we can interconvert state from solid to liquid to gas, or vice versa. Let me give you one simple example. Now, let's say we have taken a beaker which consists of gas. Okay? Now, if I apply pressure from the top, these particles of gases will come closer. Yes, it will come closer. So once it come closer, it came into a situation of liquid form. Yeah. Now, if I apply more pressure, now particles are more close to each other. Yeah, more close to each other. That means it is the situation of solid. But only by applying pressure I cannot do so. If pressure is increased, I have to maintain lower temperature. If I'm increasing the pressure here to convert state of matter, I have to decrease the temperature, or vice versa. If pressure is decreased, temperature needs to be increased. If pressure is increasing, temperature needs to be decreased. So both of these work inversely proportional to each other. If we are increasing the pressure, we have to maintain lower temperature. So there is one more very beautiful example which I'll give you, and that is this. Have you ever seen this in marriages, such cheesy wedding where Dula Dulan is coming, bride and groom is coming, and there is a lot of dhua coming? That's dry ice. Or a couple is dancing and there is dry ice. Or you might have ordered ice cream and there is a dry ice in that. You do not eat dry ice, guys. Please mind this thing. You never eat dry ice. It's quite dangerous because it's very low temperature. Never make that mistake to eat something which you have no idea about. Never ever eat this and never touch it directly. It's quite dangerous. So, as you see this beautiful image, these the smoke is because of dry ice. What is dry ice? Dry ice is none other than solid carbon dioxide. Now you must be thinking, ma'am, carbon dioxide to gaseous hai. It's always in gas state or gaseous state. Yes, you're right. So carbon dioxide is originally present in gaseous form. But if we increase high pressure, if increases the pressure extremely, decreases the temperature extremely, this carbon dioxide will directly convert into solid state without converting into liquid state. So we can solidify this without converting into liquid state, guys. So carbon dioxide gas is the original case, but if you increase the temperature, decrease the temperature, increase the pressure, you can convert it into solid carbon dioxide, which is called as dry ice. Why dry? Why dry ice? Why not just ice? Dry ice because it's not converting into liquid, so we call it as dry. As simple as that. No confusion, no rocket science here. Because carbon dioxide is not converting into liquid state, so we call it as dry. Dry ice. Simply. Fun, na? That's interesting. Okay. So solid carbon dioxide is also called as dry ice. How to convert gas into solid of carbon dioxide? You should have an idea about this. And it can be converted back again. You can make solid carbon dioxide into gaseous form. This is what you're looking here. It was solid earlier, kept in the corners, and after pressure will be reduced, temperature increases frequently, and this will convert into gaseous form, and this is what you see here around it. That's a smoke, that's a beauty. It will not harm you. Gaseous form will not harm you, but you cannot touch solid form directly. It's a damn harmful. You cannot eat it. It might cause death also. So recently I saw that in news also. Some people accidentally ate solid carbon dioxide. They have vomited out blood and all, and eventually some of them got died. So they were friends visiting some restaurant. So while you come out from restaurant, most of the time they give you some mouth freshener. If you saw that news, do let me know in the chat box. So while they're coming out from restaurant, they ate mouth freshener, and some of them, without thinking, they ate solid carbon dioxide that might be kept there maybe for some show or something. I'm not sure. So they accidentally ate it, and some of them leads to death. So you have to be really careful what you are eating, if it's just a thing to showcase or if it's edible. So as your chemistry students now, you are aware about the chemistry behind it and why this looks so beautiful, how this is actually happening. And you can later do this once you will get married. Okay, I know it's far thing I'm talking about. Alright, guys, jokes apart. Now let's move on to one of my favorite topic, that is evaporation. So, kya bolti public? How you all doing till now? Everything is understood. Classic, must samajla. Do let me know in the chat box if you have any doubts till there. I would love to solve it in the chat box. Or if you have some interesting stories as well, you can definitely let me know in the chat box. Okay, guys. So, moving up to evaporation, but do let me know, are you thinking, ma'am, vaporization or evaporation is the same thing now? If you have this in your mind, please let me know. So, guys, vaporization is different than evaporation. It sounds quite similar, but it's entirely different from each other. Okay? Now, let me tell you a difference. Vaporization is boiling. Boiling has an alternative term called as vaporization. Vaporization or boiling takes place at a constant temperature, which we call it as a boiling point, right? For this, we have to provide some heat. External heat needs to be provided. Externally, we have to heat the system to make it boil and then convert it into different state. So here we have to do something at a constant temperature. We have to provide external heat. Whereas in case of evaporation, people, in case of evaporation, we do not require a specific temperature. It never happen at a specific temperature. It is actually continuous. How it is continuous? If there is a glass having filled with water in front of you, it's evaporating. Yeah, look, see. If you're looking at your glass right now, oof, hey ma Mataji, guys, you cannot see evaporation. I was just joking. I was just okay, fine. Let's come to the topic back again. Evaporation is a continuous process. It's a slow process. Obviously, you cannot see those water particles going up. What are you looking at your glass? Yes, it's a continuous process. It's a slow process. It does not require specific temperature, but it happens at any temperature below its boiling point. Below its boiling point. So evaporation happening right now in your bottle, water bottle also. Evaporation is happening in a glass of water also right now. But you cannot see it. It's a continuous process. Evaporation happens till below the boiling point of that water or boiling point of any substance. Below that, if it's happening, it's evaporation. And if you're boiling it at a particular temperature, at its boiling point, we call it as vaporization. So this is not a continuous process. This is not slow. This is quite fast. Whereas it is a slow process, continuous process happens at any temperature below boiling point. Clear, boss? Yeah, that's a very basic difference between vaporization and evaporation. Now, this is a very common thing we are all aware about. You all have seen this, you might have got into this also. So, these are the pits everywhere on our roads filled with water. But do we need a dryer to dry it? Or do we need to boil this water to evaporate? No, no, it just evaporates because it is happening below its boiling point. It's happening from the surface. Please listen to this carefully. Evaporation is a surface phenomena. What is surface phenomena? I'll let you know in some time. Evaporation is happening from the surface as they gain energy. So water here will going to gain energy from the surrounding, and particles from the water surface will start having high kinetic energy. They will start vibrating fast. Their force of attraction will become a loose. They will break their force of attraction and turn it into vapor state. So evaporation starts from the surface. That's another difference. Boiling is a bulk phenomena, whereas evaporation is a surface phenomena. What does that mean? Surface means converting of liquid into vapor state happens from surface. It starts from surface. Whereas in boiling, bulk means entire water will going to start converting from liquid to vapor state at the same time. I'll explain this one more time to you guys. See, in vaporization and evaporation, it is a common thing. Liquid turns into vapor. In boiling also liquid turns into vapor, in evaporation also liquid turns into vapor. But how will you differentiate them? Firstly, it's a continuous slow process. This is very fast process, requires external heating at a specific temperature, which is boiling point. It is a surface phenomena, it is bulk phenomena. So as we are boiling water, if I am boiling water, every particle of water, whether it's at the base, bottom, whether it's in the middle, or whether it's on the top or the surface, each and every particle will boil and convert from liquid to vapor state. Try to convert from liquid to vapor state at the same time. Whereas if I'm talking about evaporation, so water present on the surface will have particles with high kinetic energy. Particles on the surface will have high kinetic energy because they are gaining energy from environment. They are gaining energy from the surrounding. So surface particles of water will have high kinetic energy. So they will first start converting from liquid to vapor state. And that's the reason we call evaporation as a surface phenomena, whereas boiling is considered to be as the bulk phenomena. Clear? Yeah? All right. Now, what are the factors which affect rate of evaporation? Again, rate means speed of evaporation. Now, sometimes our clothes get drier faster. In some days, our clothes will not dry faster, right? Some days we feel like wearing cotton clothes because it's summer. On summery days, we also feel like drinking water from earthen pots. So how this evaporation is happening? What are the factors which affect the rate of evaporation? One, surface area. Second, temperature. Third, humidity. Fourth, wind speed. So there are four factors which affects directly or indirectly the rate or speed of evaporation. Now you can learn this with a simple trick. Now what is that trick? Let me tell you. What? What? What word? What is the trick? This is a very sweet, simple trick to learn these factors affecting rate of evaporation. W means wind speed. Okay? H means humidity. Humidity. A means area. बोले तो surface area, just like Bond, James Bond. And T here means temperature. Yeah, so these are four factors which affect speed of evaporation or rate of evaporation. Let's learn them one by one with an example. Starting up with wind speed. So obviously when wind is faster, clothes get dry quickly. That means water from those clothes will be evaporated quickly. The speed of evaporation becomes faster with the increase in wind speed. So we can say that wind speed is directly proportional to ROE. What is ROE? Rate of evaporation. Mind it. Do not use this short form in your paper. This is not for your paper. I'm just writing it on board right now. It's actually rate of evaporation. rate of evaporation. Please do not use those short forms in your paper. Wind speed is directly proportional to rate of evaporation means bole to as wind speed increases, rate of evaporation also increases. So because of high wind speed, that blows away water vapors in the air, allowing faster rate of evaporation. So what happens with high wind speed? Let me explain this to you. So if there is a breeze, okay, if wind is coming in our air, we have water vapors. So our air is having water vapor, water content also. So as wind comes, high wind comes, these water vapors will go away, right? Which makes more space for more water vapors to be occupied in the air. So as wind comes by, that takes away and blows away the water vapor in the air, that decreases the humidity in the air, and that makes more void, more space for water vapors, and that's why speed of evaporation increases with the increase in wind speed. Samajla? Yeah, cool. Okay. Moving on to our second factor, that's humidity. Humidity in Hindi, we call it as umas. Those days when it's like chip, we have a lot of sweating and all. So in those humid days, obviously clothes do not dry faster. People living near beach area, or maybe if you're living in Chennai, you have that kind of feeling. You're always sweating, it's always a lot of humidity, and things take time to get dried up. Anybody living near Pondicherry or maybe Goa, so you know this thing very closely. So as humidity increases, rate of evaporation decreases, so they are inversely proportional to each other. Humidity increases, rate of evaporation decreases. Humidity decreases, rate of evaporation increases. Clear? Yeah. So why humidity affects rate of evaporation differently? So what will happen, guys? Usually air has the ability to have specific amount of water vapors. It can intake specific amount of water vapors. So during humid days, air is already filled. Air is already filled with water vapors. It is having huge amount or high amount of water vapors in air. So if clothes are drying up or anything is been drying, it does not give more space. Air does not give more space for more water vapors come through. So it does not allow water vapors that easily to get into those spaces of air, because air is already filled with large quantity of water vapors during humid days, and that's the reason with the increase in humidity, rate of evaporation eventually reduces. Coming to the third factor is surface area. Okay, so as we talk about chai, yeah, anybody who drinks tea, or maybe I've ever seen people drinking tea from a saucer, yeah, sur karke. So you might have seen people pouring their tea into saucer and trying to drink it. Why? Because it cools down quickly because of the increase in surface area, right? So as you're sipping tea from a cup or you're sipping tea from a saucer tea will always be cooler as compared to cup ka tea, because saucer has a bigger surface area. Evaporation is done quickly, and that's why it becomes cooler quickly. Now, second example, which you might relate more, if your parents have given you some clothes to dry up, है ना? Today washing machine का round लगा, and your parents have given you clothes to chalo dry these clothes, and you just place them like that, and you've not spreaded them properly. What will happen? Obviously that will take time to dry, right? So if you spread them properly means you're increasing their surface area, rate of evaporation will increase. So surface area and ROE are directly proportional to each other. But if you just keep it in a bundle, that wet clothes, if you keep it just like that without spreading, they will obviously take time to dry up. So rate of evaporation will be slow in that case. Now, coming up to your next and last factor, that is temperature. Temperature increases, rate of evaporation increases. Both of them are directly proportional to each other. Now, some of you might be thinking, what is this sign, ma'am? This sign is a proportionality sign. This sign is proportionality sign. Okay? So these two are directly proportional to each other. Temperature increases, ROA increases. Temperature decreases, rate of evaporation decreases. And a very simple example, clothes get drier faster in summers rather than in winters. Clothes dry faster in summers or a sunny day rather than on a cloudy day. Yeah. So sun is there, temperature increases, kinetic energy between particles increases, and they will try to convert themselves from liquid to vapor state. Particles become far apart from each other. Simple here. Very simple chapter. You can relate it with your day-to-day life at every point of the topic. There are some topics in between where you have to use your brain, like latent heat, but rest of the topics I think are quite relatable, and questions can be solved very easily. Even if you remember the context, you can write the answers in your own language. So that's the plus point of this chapter. All right. Next is evaporation causes cooling. So as we have learned, what is evaporation, right? Evaporation is turning liquid to vapors at any temperature below boiling point. That's evaporation. Evaporation is affected by certain factors, or the speed of evaporation are affected by what? That is wind speed, surface area, temperature and humidity. There are 4 factors which affects rate of evaporation. But on the other side, evaporation causes cooling, and it's such a beautiful thing sometimes. Every one of you might have felt it. Actually, I'll give you one simple example. Imagine you're going on a hot sunny day outside and you're sweating like anything, and that hot wind comes to you. How will you feel? That hot wind, in Hindi we call it as loo, if it hits your body which is sweating, you still feel cooler for some time, maybe for some time. Yeah, do you know that kind of feeling when you're sweating? Even a hot breeze can make you feel cooler. That's evaporation causes cooling. Or there is one more example which some of you might relate. If when there were no coolers or when there were no ACs, people used to sprinkle water on their roofs so that their rooms become cooler. That is also one of the example of evaporation causes cooling. If you've ever used nail paint remover is called acetone. Its chemical name is acetone. If you've ever used nail paint remover, you try to put it on your skin, it makes you feel cooler. In fact, if you spray some perfume on your skin, that makes you feel cooler. Those who have not used nail paint remover, you can ask your parents or your sister or your mother to use some, but at your own risk. Put it on your skin little bit and you can feel that coolness. So this is all about evaporation causes cooling. So these are the examples which are going around us, but we have no idea about the chemistry, the chemical locha which is going in it. And that's evaporation. One simple term, but we are surrounded with it all the time. Shall let's get to it. Evaporation causes cooling. How this is exactly happening? So when a liquid evaporates, when liquid turn into vapor states, starts evaporating, that liquid particles gain some energy. That requires some energy to vaporize, right? So that absorbs the heat from the surrounding and evaporates and makes surrounding feel cooler. So if evaporation is happening very frequently, that makes your surrounding feel quite cooler, because liquid particles are taking heat from the surrounding and converting into vapor state. In return, they are making surrounding feels more cooler. Let me give you examples in form of questions, because these questions are quite important for your exam point of view. So I am going to explain these topics, but as with it, I've provided you questions along with their answers. So it's a plus point, a win-win situation for you. So you can see the questions also, and along with that, there are answers given here. So one of the very common example in every household, we find this thing which is called as earthen pot. In Hindi, we call it as matka, right? So what happens in matka? In summers, as we put water, it becomes cooler. It tastes very, very earthy. And to be very honest, let me tell you guys the truth about myself. I don't drink water from fridge. Never. Still, I have this kind of throat, imagine. So I love to drink matka water in summers rather than drinking it from fridge, because that doesn't taste earthy, right? So how come this earthen pot makes water feels cooler? What is the chemistry behind that? So matka, or this earthen pot, has small pores in it, very small pores in it, and we have water inside it, right? So this water penetrates outside. If you ever touch that matka, or if you ever touch a earthen pot filled with water, you will feel little moisture on the surface. Have you? Have you felt this? Do let me know in the chat box. So if you feel that matka from outside, you always see that there is some moisture on the surface. Why is that so? Because water has been penetrated to the outer surface because of this porous nature. Now, water is on the surface. This water is connected with the hot surrounding. Yeah, there is a hot surrounding, hot air nearby. So these water will turn into vapor state, turns into vapor state. How? Because it takes away the heat from the water itself. It takes that energy from hot water present in matka. So that is called as extra heat. So that takes away that latent heat present in this water of earthen pot and vaporizes, and at the same time it leaves that water feels cooler. So what is happening? I'll explain you one more time. Water on the surface, as it comes in contact with the hot surrounding, it start vaporizing, it start converting from liquid to vapor state, takes away the latent heat of vaporization, takes away that extra heat from the water and makes it feel cooler. Now at the same time, if we take an example of acetone, which is nail paint remover, or if you take an example of, let's say, perfumes. So as soon as you spray it on your body, on your skin, it takes away the heat from your skin. It vaporizes. That liquid turns into vapor state quickly. You know how acetone converts from liquid to vapor state. You know how quickly sprays get vaporized. So as soon as it converts from liquid to vapor state, it takes that extra heat from your body, that latent heat from your body, and makes your skin feel cooler. All right. Now, next question is something you all can relate with, and that's cotton clothes. How we feel cool while we're wearing cotton clothes during summer season. Our question is, why do we choose cotton over synthetic in summer season? Because it's quite breezy, it's quite porous. So cotton clothes, being porous in nature, even if your body is sweating, right, in summers body has a mechanism to release extra water and release sweat. So that sweat from your body will vaporize, and once it vaporizes, it takes away the extra amount of heat and a latent heat from your body and makes it feel cooler. So what cotton clothes are doing? They are good absorber of sweat. Secondly, they are porous in exposing your body to the air, outer surrounding. So that makes you feel more comfortable, and that makes you feel more cooler. So during summer, obviously we perspire, and that's the mechanism of our body, and that's how it makes us feel cooler. Cotton, being good absorber of water, helps absorbing sweat exposed to the atmosphere, which makes it easier for evaporation. And thirdly, during evaporation, particles from the surface of liquid gain energy from the surrounding of body surface, and that makes it feel cooler. And that's how that evaporation thing happens. Is that clear to all of you? Give me a thumbs up in chat box. Come on. Cool. Yeah? So guys, that was the simplest chapter of your grade 9 matter and surrounding, and the most relatable topic from your day-to-day life. You can integrate with any matter you're surrounded with. As I told you, in fact, we as a human beings are also considered to be as a matter, because we are made up of particles. So a little progress each day adds up to your big results. It's not something you have to finish one chapter in one day. At least you can see in bits and parts. In fact, if you have the capability to learn quickly, you can just put it on 2x speed and watch it, man. It's a simple thing to do, simple chapter. So I hope you understood each and every bit of this chapter. Let's catch up again in the next session. Till then, stay safe, stay happy always. This is a homework question for you guys. This is entire homework question, and please solve it. Do let me know the answers in the chat box. Kinetic energy of molecule is directly proportional to A, temperature, B, pressure, C, both NB and D, atmospheric pressure. So overall, we have learned about physical nature. Yeah, we have learned about physical nature of matter. What is matter? They are made up of smaller particles. Along with that, we have also learned about what are the factors used to interconvert state of matter, solid, liquid to gas, and directly from solid to gas, or gases to solid directly. So we have learned about melting, boiling, then condensation, as well as sublimation, deposition, right? Freezing or solidification. So we have covered all the topics in that. Thirdly, we have also learned about evaporation and its factors affecting evaporation, and how evaporation causes cooling. So we have summed up the entire chapter in one session. So enjoy this video. Look again if you have still any doubts. Feel free to ask me. That was it from my side, guys. This is me, Rajta Sachdeva, signing off. Take care, stay safe, stay happy always, and फिर मिलेंगे जल्दी जल्दी. Bye. Take care. See ya.